Hello there and welcome. The threat of the insurgency ravaging the northeastern part of the country is indeed frightening and worrisome, not just to the government and people of Nigeria, but the international community as well. With the continued spate of attacks on thousands of lives and destruction of property, one begins to wonder if Nigeria is still in a conflict situation or a full-blown war. Despite efforts of the Nigerian military to put an end to the crisis, criticisms continue to trail the federal government's approach in dealing with the violence as the terrorists continue their campaign of bombings, kidnappings, mass murders, and forceful takeovers of communities and towns in parts of the Northeast. Our guest this week to help take a closer look at this situation is the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, the NIA, Professor Bola Akiterwa, as he gives his view on the thinking and operation of the terrorists we have now come to know as Boko Haram, and suggestions to what can be done to deal with them. Is Boko Haram all about instilling the Islamic religion in a rather violent manner, or an ideology? What are the members really fighting for anyway? Who is Boko Haram's influences internationally or even locally? And are there likely implications of the insurgency on Nigeria's foreign policy and relations? Join us in this interview as we take a look at all of these. I'm Ayotunde Balogun, and it's Question Time. Professor Bola Akiterwa, you're welcome to Question Time.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here with you again.
Now we're looking at the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs. Of course, we understand that it's one body or institute that has been at the forefront in trying to make sure that the study into Nigeria's foreign relations, foreign policy, is something that matches up with the status, if I may say, of Nigeria as a leading country, not just in West Africa, but the African sub-region. But of course, lately we've been dealing with the issues of insecurity, international terrorism, which is also something that has been discussed around the world, and Nigeria is also having its fair share. Let's look at terrorism in Nigeria as it is presently. I mean, what's going on now? Why are we finding it difficult to deal with this? How did we get to this point in the first place?
You see, there's nothing like absolute security anywhere in the world and at whatever level. And then security of the mind, security of the stomach, or what they call infrastructure, in Ekiti State. State security, physical security, these are the multidimensional aspects of security. The definition of security in the developed world is quite different from the way third world countries have also defined it. So, at the level of that question alone, for me, please, I do not subscribe to the argument that Nigeria is insecure. But I agree readily that in some parts, we are having threats to national security. Now, in the context of the question, security, the situation in Nigeria, when people look at Boko Haramism as insurrection all along, yes, to an extent, it responds to that. But the truth is that Boko Haram is a group of people that had actually declared total war on the sovereignty of Nigeria. The Constitution provides for a secular state, all right? There will not be any state religion. But they are challenging that. They are not challenging by way of debate. They are not challenging by way of discussion. They are not challenging by way of negotiation. They decided just to confront without having officially declared a war on Nigeria.
All right, now looking at Nigeria's situation, in the West African sub-region, of course, we share borders with the likes of Niger Republic, Chad, our neighbors that share boundaries with us in trying to deal with this threat of terrorism, which they've also been experiencing in a couple of months and weeks now. You wonder, where does Nigeria's foreign relations, with these countries, or international diplomacy, where does it come in all of these, in trying to arrest the situation?
If you look at Boko Haram as an idea, as ideology, it is not a chair or a table that you can destroy. You cannot destroy an idea. You cannot, the best you can do is to disagree with the ideology. Now Boko Haram is about Islamic Jihad. They made it clear. Even when Shekau, the leader, kidnapped the Chibok girls, in their video submission to the whole world, what he said is that, look, that he will sell the girls for how much? $12, per person. The buyers, they want to trade life. Thus, we thought we have thrown into the dustbin of history slavery. But now he's telling us, look, they will sell the girls. That is a component element of the ideology. The Boko Haramis said that anyone who does not accept their own interpretation of the Islamic faith of Quran is a non-fidel. They say it's an infidel. In this case, their thinking is that they are fighting for God, that when they kill for God, when they kill an infidel, yes, paradise is waiting for them, all doors widely open. And now, look at it this way. Any place that the Boko Haram passes through, when they succeed temporarily to stay there, they put their flag, they change the name. They call it Islamic Caliphate. That is to let you know that even if they do not directly open their mouth to say this is their objective, acts can explain the objective. So it's basically Islamic Jihad.
Now, Prof, could that also be a way by the insurgents or the Boko Haramists to make a statement by wiping a whole large of the civilian population so as not to make it possible for any room to have a leader or a structure of governance in place so that they can further their own agenda?
Any interpretation of the objective of the Boko Haram is tenable scientifically. In this case, it will be considered as hypothesis. Because in this case, what the Boko Haramis are doing, all right, they are flouting international humanitarian law. The answer to the question in the context of ideology is to let you know that Boko Haram as an idea in Nigeria, all right, is a component of an international ideology. All these, you have Akim, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb.
ISIL.
Okay, ISIL, you go back to Syria. Okay, Al-Shabaab in Somalia. The crisis in the Central African Republic. Okay, all these terrorist activism initially used to be against the developed world. Please, terrorism, in whichever dimension you want to look at it, whether in terms of kidnapping, letter bomb, parcel bomb, suicide bombing, skyjacking, okay, all these are components of terrorism. before, it started basically as a result of the dispute between the Arabs and the Israelis. When the Palestinian Liberation Organization decided to be using terrorist activities to make a case for themselves. By that time, the big countries, the big powers, will have their diplomats, their principal representatives, all right, attacked. They have killed many ambassadors, either of Britain or of the US. In the past, what would they do? They will put a time bomb either by the side of their cars or somewhere, and they will detonate, you know, and then be killing them.
And these still rages on even today?
Well, but it's to an extent reduced. The issue now, you know, the international community deceives itself with an argument according to which, since the end of the World War II, we've not had another conflagration, we've not had another world war, and it pleases itself by saying that what we now have is intrastate wars.
Now, Prof, don't you think that the issue of terrorism in Nigeria and, of course, in other parts of the world that are experiencing this threat can really degenerate into another world war if care is not being taken?
Well, look, a war must start at a particular point. How did the First World War start? How did the Second World War start? Is it not as a result of a crisis, consciously provoked? All right? Even though some scholars have traced the genesis of the Second World War not to 1939, as we argue, but to the Manchuria conflict in 1931, that gradually, right, they trace the chronological events, all right, and now say that 1939 was just the crescendo of a crisis that started as far back as 1931. So you see, at the end of the day, when does a war begin? Is it when it is a shooting war or when it is planned? Is it when you declare it? So an exact date cannot actually be given. However, the critical point is that even in a situation of intrastate war, are no longer interstate as they are arguing, many countries of the world have been involved. Central African Republic, many countries are there. Currently in dealing with
the superpowers,
precisely
in terms of vested interests.
Talking about Boko Haram in Nigeria, didn't we bring the United States, the British, the French, the Israelis? Are they not? But have they been able to bring back the Chibok girls?